Hello and welcome to the Scottish Clans. I'm Clint. Thank you for joining me today. I have a short episode for you today, but I think it's important as we try to understand not only how Scottish clans operated, but the origin of the Scottish clans. And so this episode is going to be a kind of a two-part, the first in a two-part series, and it's in response to something I see a lot of on the Facebook page. So hang with me for at least a couple of episodes here so I can get my full thoughts across. Now, before I get into this episode today, I want to give a shout out to my sponsor, USA Kilts. They produce a fine kilt. Very high quality, awesome customer service, free shipping in the US. Go check them out at usakilts.com. Also, they've got a really cool YouTube channel. It's called USA Kilts and Celtic Traditions. So go there and check them out. I'll have links to them in the show notes. And let's jump into this. All right, so what I wanted to discuss today, and I have hit on this in previous episodes, but I just hit on it. I just mentioned it briefly and then rock on with whatever we're talking about, not this. So today I want to actually talk about the terms in Gaelic that are important when discussing their kin-based society. All right. Now, this is going to have a couple of implications for two different conversations, and both of them that have been really rolled around a lot on our Facebook group. Guys, you know, I'm not on the Facebook stuff all the time. Like, if you really want to get a hold of me, reach out, give me some feedback on an episode or an idea or something like that, don't just throw the comment on our Facebook group called Scottish Clans, because I may or may not see it. Now, recently, I have got on there a little bit more and been involved in the conversations there, and I would really, really encourage you, if you're listening to this podcast and you don't know about the Facebook group, I'd really encourage you to go over there, because we have some pretty knowledgeable guys who form kind of the core of the group. And we have a lot of other awesome members of the group. By the way, the group's like 14,500 people, which is 1 billion times more. I thought when I first started it, I thought this is going to be like me and like 10 other people. I thought my membership would be mentioned or measured in the dozens, not the thousands. So it's way bigger. Now I know maybe a few of those are bots. A lot of them are probably people who don't take a real active part in this. If you're listening to this episode, and it's interesting the dichotomy or the divisions of the different types of people that are a member of that group. I guess without just getting way off on a tangent, my point here is that there's some great discussions going on over there, and it's free flow. It's some guy or gal will jump up on there and post something, and often the post itself is valuable, but then you'll have all these people jumping on, and sometimes it's a debate. Sometimes it's not a debate, but it's like, oh, here's another thought about that. And the original poster is like, oh yeah, that's really good. Thought I hadn't thought about that. And it's just some really quality content on there. Some people get a little wrapped around the axle because Neil King will jump on there and tell them their family's not a clan, which I get a kick out of it. I really do. Neil, thank you so much for your contribution. I have a core of others who are just awesome. I'm not going to mention them all because I'll leave off people, but it's Neil, and I mentioned him specifically on here because he's the one that gets the most hate, and it's by people who just I don't know why. I just don't know why we got to be mean to each other, but he'll get up there and I've never seen him just be disrespectful. I've never seen him just jump on there and just be a turd and just like, you know what? That's not a clan, and you're stupid. He never says it like that, but they often respond as though that's how he did it. And lately, it was maybe a week or so ago, somebody got up there and started. It was pretty entertaining. They went way off into crazy land. Anyway, and it was all aimed at him. But so I just want to give him a little love on this episode because he gets a lot of hate when he just keeps, or he'll not just correct somebody, he'll just say, hey, that's awesome, but this is a Scottish clans. We're trying to talk about Scottish clans. It's not just thistles and bagpipes and tartan that we're going to throw on here. So yeah, but it's a really good place. You should go check out the discussion on the Facebook group called Scottish Clans because there's some quality stuff on there. And like I said, there's some not quality stuff, but my admin helpers are doing a great job of policing that up, and I just wanted to give them a little love, little shout out, not just to Neil, but to several of the people on there. Go on there and see if you can learn something. I'll bet you can. All right. Hey, another thing I wanted to mention before I go face first into this thing here is I'm really fleshing out, and it's just chipping away a little bit at a time, so it's not a complete and finished product. But Podbean, who is my web host, whoever has a podcast, they always have a web host. Mine's Podbean. And yes, you can reach out and connect with me on there. You can leave me comments. But they offer you, which I didn't realize until a couple months ago, a free website. Like, just go ahead and build a website for your podcast on here. And I've been messed around with Wix, and I never really got around to making it much. Anyway, and without even realizing it. And so this is pretty cool that I get to have a website on there. And so the first thing that I'm developing on there is sources, because that's one thing that I feel strongly about sources. B, you're only as good as your sources, and that's why I feel so strongly about them. But C, I've had on the Facebook group and some other venues, people reach out and say, hey, can you create like a master list of sources for the rest of us who want to jump in and study this? So guess what I'm doing over on the Podbean website? I am creating sources. So if you just go to scottishclans.podbean.com, and there's if you go there, that's kind of that's the main page, and up at the top there's some options. Go to sources, and I've got a whole list of sources on that. It's called Sources for Studying the Scottish Clans. The link you'll see will just say sources. But when you go there, that's what the title of the web, that particular page is. And I'm going to say I've built up a pretty good list so far. It's far from done. It probably never will be done as long as I'm engaged with this effort. But I've got the first section is a pretty good section of links that you can get. So a lot of these older references, the first one I've got on there is the genealogical history of the earldom of Sutherland from its origin to the year 1630. So this was written actually in the early 1600s when there were actual, no kidding, real clans still running around Scotland. I'm not talking about clan societies with the president and a monthly email newsletter. I'm talking about no kidding Scottish clans. Like, hey, somebody's infringed on the honor of the clan, and we're going to go take it to them. Hey, why are we missing cattle? I don't know. Somebody said they saw McFarland's around here a while ago. Anyway, so that's a cool source. Well, guess what? You can find that source for free on the internet in a PDF form, and I've got links to it here. Anyway, go check out this page here. I've got a whole section of just, hey, if you want a free PDF, just go check out these links. Doesn't cost you anything, and I'm not making anything off of that part of it. The next section is more scholarly, right? So some of that first list, some of it's scholarly, some of it's not. Some of it's really good because it's contemporary stuff. And anyway, just go check that out, and you can sift through there and see what you like. But the second section is stuff from academia.edu. Not all scholars are equal, not all professors. I'm down with that, but this is a place where some pretty big name people that we've used on this site, they use academia.edu. I've mentioned when we're talking about earlier, like the origins of the clans, and we're diving back a little farther than most clans actually started, but we're looking at the foundations. You got guys like David Baroun and Alex Wolf. Alex Wolf is on academia.edu. So is the guy that wrote the stuff on the Kennedys that I used a while ago, Hector McLeod, was it? Maybe. Anyway, I've actually got his link on there So Survival and Success, the Kennedys of Dinner. Go to that. That's his stuff. Anyway, I don't know, there's actual scholars, Catherine Swift, Michael Newton, and I've used their stuff here before. Catherine Swift is more Irish stuff. Michael Newton, he's actually a fluent Gaelic speaker, and he's a professor at a university in North Carolina. I can't remember which one it was, but I've used his stuff a ton on here. And then academia.edu, it's a free, you don't have to be, it's not like JSTOR or EBSCOhost where you have to, some organization or you got to pay money. You can just go on there, get a free account. I figured it out while I was doing my master's program, but I didn't get it because I was a student with American Military University. I did it because I just got on there and did it, and I've still got it, even though I'm not in school anymore. And so anybody can just hop on there for free and get an account, and then drive around in there and explore. But if you want to get there in the first place and you want to find some stuff, I've got some links to articles that I've pulled from academia.edu and used them in previous episodes. And the third section that I've got here is, so they're affiliate links. So I've got an affiliate account with Amazon. And so if you go to these links, but it doesn't cost you more. So it's not like, anyway, just go to these links and click on them. They'll take you to that book on Amazon, and you can buy that book there. I know, so some of these you can only get on Amazon. Warriors of the Word by Michael Newton that I just barely mentioned. I've used it a lot as a source for this episode, or not for this podcast. And you can't, that's a whole book. You can't just download a free PDF of that. But I've got a link to the Amazon book here, and it, like I said, it's an affiliate link. Now, some of the links I have on this part were already mentioned back up on the free PDF part, so you could get it for free. But I know that some of you, maybe some of my older listeners, and that's cool, and maybe some of the youngers, I don't know, they like to have something solid, a hard copy, in their hands. They like to go through it with a marking pencil, and they like to mark it up and write notes in the margin like I'm doing with this book about the Campbells by this one that I've mentioned. I'm neck deep in this, man. This book on the Campbells. It is awesome. It's called The Campbells, 1253 to 1513 or 1258. Anyway, it's got this date range that's talking about. Guys, this book is awesome. Anyway, we've got, it's by Stephen Boardman. Gosh, another scholar who I've used extensively on this podcast. So I've got a link to that on Amazon. You can't just get a free PDF. Most of these books are in the $30 range. Some of them are less, some of them are more, like Kinship and Clientage by Alison Cathcart. That's more because it's used as a textbook. And I don't know all the machinations that go on why textbooks are so expensive. I doubt it has. Anyway, get me off on a tangent that way. But that one's more. But a lot of these ones are in the $20 to $30 range. So, and there's cheaper versions. If you go on there and buy a used copy of it, which I like to do, the Campbell's version, that's a brand new book. But I do have like the one, The Kingdom of the Isles by R. Andrew MacDonald. That one was I bought a used copy of that. So, and I know there's a link to that one, but there's this huge list on that one, and they're all Amazon affiliate links. So go click there if you're just interested on what I'm using, because like I've said, this has been brought up more than once. What sources? Like, can we get a list of sources? And so, yeah, I'm building that. So it's a work in progress, but if you go to the sources page on scottishclans.podbean.com, you'll be able to see a huge list on there if you just want to go nuts. All right. So that's a new project. That's a little labor of love that I've been working on there. So go check it out. All right. So let's get back into. So I want to talk about the Gaelic or Gaelic, depending on if you're in Ireland or Scotland, words that they use for this kin-based society, this clan system we always use to just kind of sum up the whole thing. We've got, I'm just going to go off just list down some of these Gaelic words that in Gaelic are used for different parts of the kin-based society, okay? And I've got some examples of each different word being used here. So I've got the definition of it, like what it literally means, but then also how it's been used talking about clans. So the first one I'm going to jump into here is the one called canale. Now, canale is used earlier. So the most in Scottish history specifically, the time you see this word canale used the most is when it's talking about the leading kindreds of Dal Riata. For those of you who don't know what that is we're going back, theoretically, we're going back into the 500s AD to where you had the Picts, the Scots, the Angles of Northumbrian, the Britons of Strathclyde, or the Clyde Rock Britons, or the Britons of Dumbarton, the different words. Sometimes Britons of Strathclyde is a later type, like a post-Viking type of thing, but anyway, you get the idea. So that was back when those are the main components of the people inhabiting land that's now called Scotland. And for the kingdom of Dal Riata, they were the one out of those four that was speaking Gaelic, or some old version of it. And you see the division of those leading kindreds of that kingdom, and they're referred to, they don't call them clan, they call them canale. And I think I'm getting that right, but I'm not a fluent Gaelic speaker. So you have these leading kindreds. Examples are, and by the way, canale means race, nation, people, or kind. I got that off of Wiktionary. All right, so canale na Bhrain, the descendants or the people of Gabrain, or Gavrain. I don't know how far back that B starts changing to a V sound, but canale na Bhrain is how I read in a book one time that it would have been pronounced back that far. You have canale Lorne. And so canale, just a note about canale na Bhrain. When the royal houses of the Picts and the Scots merged under the MacAlpin dynasty, that MacAlpin dynasty, they claim descent from canale na Bhrain. Now, the next one I was going to mention is the canale Lorne. Canale Lorne, they would go back and forth with canale na Bhrain in the leadership of Dal Riata. And whereas the canale na Bhrain during the Viking Age pushed east, right? They moved their center from the Isles off the west coast of Scotland, those southern Hebridean, I think is how I heard it on a YouTube video, Hebridean Isles, Hebrides, they pushed east and established their capital at Scone, or Scone, depending on who you're talking to. And the canale Lorne, who gave their name to the part of Scotland in northern Argyll called Lorne, they pushed up the Great Glen and established themselves up closer to Inverness. And they became depending on, like I said, what source you're looking at, some of the Irish annals refer to it as a kingdom of Murray. In Gaelic, it was Murriv. And other sources will call it, they're the Mormaers, or later the Earls of Murray. But, and at first, they were independent of the kingdom of the Scots, that MacAlpin dynasty. They were kind of doing their own thing, and it's from this group that you get Macbeth. All right, so canale Lorne, maybe even some of the kindreds descended from those early Earls of Lorne. You'll see it written in historical sources as Macbeth, Mac, and then Heth. What that probably is Mac-Ith. That I'm not really sure about the Gaelic spelling, but something like AED or AOIDH, but there's kind of like a soft TH sound there at the very end of that. And that was eventually dropped off, and you get Mackay, or in America more commonly, Mackay. And in very few circumstances, Mackie. But Mackay is how, and I can't 100% prove that the Mackays of Strathnaver are descended from these Macbeth Mormaers of Murray, but if they are, and I'm not the only one who thinks that, then they tie back into canale Lorne. You got canale Comgall, which those middle consonants there kind of get breathed past later on and becomes Cowell. So the part in Argyll that's called Cowell comes from canale Comgall, and then canale Nungussa, would have been based in Islay, the Isle of Islay, which would later be the headquarters of the Lordship of the Isles and the MacDonalds, but earlier in the Dalriada times, it was Canail Nangussa. And with Comgal and Nangussa, I don't know, like with Canail Navrain and Lorne, I don't know what they later became, but those are early examples of Canail. The next one is the next word. So you got Canail, you got Sliecht. And that literally means seed, offspring, progeny, posterity, or descendants. The example of these that I found is in a book written. It's written by Alan G. McPherson. It's not a book, it's like a paper, and it's an old Highland genealogy and the evolution of a Scottish clan, and it is, you guessed it, about the McPhersons. Now, in there, he quotes the Invereshi book genealogy, and it mentions 3 divisions of the McPherson clan into Sliecht Chinig, the Sliecht Ian, and the Sliecht Gileisa. So 3 divisions of the McPherson clan, and they're calling them Sliecht. So we're looking at maybe a smaller, the connotation is a smaller group, but eventually rolled up and sometimes referred to as clans. But he claims that these 3 divisions of the McPherson clan, are still visible in the muster for the clan for Ewan of Cluny's regiment in the 1745 Jacobite Rebellion. So that's kind of interesting. So there's an example of the use of the word Sliecht. You have the word Shiel. It can mean seed in various senses. It can mean brood, descendants, progeny, lineage, breed, or race, or ancestry, tribe, or clan. It can mean all those according to Wiktionary. Guys, I'm not a fluent Gaelic speaker. Like I said, I don't know. That's just, somebody knows better. I would gratefully receive a correction. Set me straight. If I'm misadjusting anything here. 2 examples of this are, I'll give you on the Wikipedia page, so take this for what it's worth. You've got Shiel Vorgan, or the descendants of Morgan, which was a Gaelic term for the Mackays of Strathnaver. And I didn't find a lot of really solid scholarly stuff on the connection between Clan Morgan, in this case Shiel Vorgan, and the Mackays, but one that's a little more solid than that is Shiel Tormod and Shiel Torkel, which are the 2 big divisions within the MacLeod clan. All right, and so the Shiel Torkel are the MacLeods of Lewis, and they have different branches, and then the Shiel Tormod are that division of the MacLeods, or the MacLeods, the chiefs would be known as MacLeod of MacLeod. The clan was the MacLeods of Dunvegan and Harrison Dunvegan. And they're the ones that have the Dunvegan Castle on the Isle of Skye, still inhabited, so it's pretty cool. Anyway, so there's that term Shiel that is another Gaelic reference to a kin group, all right? Now, we have the word clan itself actually comes from Gaelic. Most of you listening to this probably already knew that. Now, it literally translates as children of, or offspring of, race, or descendants. And for my examples of this, I could have just gone like Clan Donald, Clan Gregor, Clan Farland, or stuff like that, and made the very easy to associate connections to. But I thought I'd throw in for you here, for my examples, versions that are usually only used in Gaelic, and we don't use them in English very often. So an example of that is, for the Campbells, an earlier appellation, not Appalachian or Appalachian, like the mountain range in America, in the United States, but an earlier reference to the Campbell kindred was the Odunia or Macdunia in a 1369 document, referring to them as descendants of a guy named Duncan MacDunia. But they were Clan Dunia, and they claimed through this descent from Diarmid O'Dunia. And I can go into a lot of history on this, and I've learned a ton of cool stuff from Stephen Boardman in that book I mentioned earlier about the Campbells. But that's a Gaelic association that the Campbells have with that name. The MacDonalds of Slate from the Isle of Skye, in Gaelic, sometimes they were referred to as Clan Ushton, from a previous ancestor of theirs. The Munros could sometimes go by Clan Anrohach, and the Rosses, Clan Anris or Andris. And so just different, known in Gaelic by terms that we would not really, if you didn't know better and you just heard somebody talking about Clan Uchtid, you would never know that that was the MacDonalds of Slate. So I think that's kind of cool that in Gaelic they have these different names that don't really connect at all with how we would hear it in English. Another Gaelic word is the word tua, which means tribe. I don't see this a ton in Scottish history. In fact, the time I've seen this word used the most is the Tuatha Dé Danann, which are the, if you know anything about the origin of the Gaels, their origin myths or legends, which is funny because now DNA is actually showing some links. Not that it's exactly how we see it laid out in the Leber Gabala Naharan. I think, is that what it is? Leber Gabala Aaron? So, the Book of Invasions is what it is, translates into English. And that's their kind of their origin story is like, okay, Ireland was first inhabited by this group and then that group, and then they had this and that. And when the Gaels showed up to Ireland, it was controlled by the Tuatha Dé Danann. And you've seen that word Tua, tribe of the goddess. They think goddess Danu, but now this is a lot of reverse constructing of, because they don't, it's a lot of guesswork from all that I've been able to read on this about the Tuatha Dé Danann and who was the original Danann or Danu that the tribe was named after. And but then nevertheless you hear the word Tua. And I think in older Irish contexts you see this word, but I haven't seen it a lot used in Scotland. Now here is something that would be relevant. And for a lot of this, there's two different YouTube videos that I want to refer you to, and I'll include the links in the notes for this. The one is from Catherine Swift, who is an Irish scholar, and it's a recording of a lecture that she gave. And so what you're looking at are her PowerPoint slides, and you're listening to her give this presentation to a public group. And she goes into this on way more detail than I will ever do in a podcast. And so I'm just going to refer you to her on this. But so there's that one source. And another one is a not quite so scholarly, although I'm not saying that this person with this YouTube channel that I've mentioned before on here is less knowledgeable or less professional about the information. I'm just saying it's presented more toward a popular, the presentation of it's more toward a popular audience. Okay. And I think both of them are worth watching. So it's the Clans and Dynasties YouTube channel. And on that, this video is called, what was the difference between Irish and Scottish clans? And he goes in there and talks about this word finne or finne. And this word, it literally means vine, but it goes into the different generations from the common ancestor that's claimed, right? This kinship, obviously, if you're kin to somebody, you share an ancestor somewhere, and they have different words relating to this word finne, depending on how many generations you were removed. So the Gael finne were people within 3 generations of the common ancestor. The Dair finne were a broader kindred, 4 generations. The Ir finne would be 5 generations, and the Ind finne would be 6 generations. So, and depending on how many generations you were removed from the common ancestor, that would have a lot to do with are you in line to succeed? Are you in the running to become the new chief or the leader of the kindred? What are your obligations to the broader kindred? And all this dives into the Brehon law and this kin-based society that was very official and codified and goes back a long ways in Ireland. And you've heard me mention, and Catherine Swift touches on this in her video. She does bring, even though she's looking at this mostly at the Irish kindreds, she does, part of this presentation does reach over and pull in the Scottish clans and talks about comparison and contrast. So she does get into that, and it reinforces what I've seen from reading Michael Newton's book, The Warriors of the Word, or just Warriors of the Word, in that I was just struck by the cultural continuity that exists between Gaelic Scotland and Gaelic Ireland. It really is quite strong. And it doesn't mean that we can assume that because it's in Ireland, it was in Gaelic Scotland, but it's a starting point. And if you want to dive into that a little deeper, I'll go click on this link for Catherine Swift's video that I'm going to give you. All right, and so that's all there's probably way more. In fact, I know that Catherine Swift in her presentation goes into this a little bit deeper, and there's more words and stuff, but that's good for right now. Before I talk about like just rolling over and kind of capping this off with talking about the English end of it, let me just ask you a few questions, shall I? Can you wear a restricted or privately owned tartan on your kilt? Who decides if a tartan is official for a clan? And or for any other organization? It's not just clans that have tartans, it's universities have them. Different branches of the U.S. military officially have them. There's district tartans in Scotland. Who decides if it's official? Is the difference between a cheaper kilt or a more expensive kilt easily recognizable? For the answers to those questions, I'm going to refer you to my buddies Rocky and Eric over at USA Kilts and their YouTube channel, USA Kilts and Celtic Traditions. In some of their more recent videos, they're answering those questions, and I would recommend you go watch it, because I did. I thought it was interesting. So that's Rocky and Eric at their USA Kilts and Celtic Traditions YouTube channel, which is awesome. And they don't just talk about kilts and wearing kilts in there the whole time. They talk about some other stuff of Scottish history and culture. And so I recommend that channel to you. And also go to their storefront, usakilts.com, if you want some superior quality Scottish clothing and other stuff. Okay, jewelry. Go check them out. Great customer service, awesome quality kilts, and free shipping within the U.S. Yeah, and I think, and I got on their website and I was kind of running around some part of it, and I stumbled onto some it's almost like blog posts, but there's just some content, some actual, just no kidding, content on. It's almost like if the YouTube channels were turned into like articles. So I found articles was the word I was looking for. Go on there and check them out. usakilts.com or USA Kilts and Celtic Traditions on YouTube. Go check them out. All right, so so we take all these here now. So here's some friction between when you study this subject. You've got all of these Gaelic terms for different aspects of a kin-based society, and I will bet you, the way I presented this, it might learn that Canale, Sliecht, Shiel, Clan, Tua, they could all be used interchangeably. I'd be really surprised if that was the case. I'll bet each one of them has a nuance that if you were a fluent Gaelic speaker, you might use these terms slightly different in certain circumstances to refer to specific things. So this clan-based society, or this kin-based society, specifically within the Gaeltacht, the area where they speak Gaelic or used to speak Gaelic, was a very developed thing. This wasn't just like, hey, let's start a club. You got to be president. Let's call you a chief. No, this is many aspects of it are codified in Brehon law in Ireland and would translate over into Scotland. It's very, very specific. And then we take that whole thing and we just wrap it up, and in English we call it clan. Or sometimes we might use the term sept, which Catherine Swift addresses that term as well, or we'll say tribe. And tribe has come to, in English, have kind of a negative connotation, usually refer to maybe a little backward society, definitely not as socially advanced as we might consider other societies. And there's that little negative connotation to it. But we basically, our whole, and overwhelmingly when we're talking about clans, we call them septs. We'll also might use the term branch. So if you go on Wikipedia, you can look, that's the ultimate scholarly source for studying clans. If you go there, you go Clan Donald, okay? Go to Clan Donald's Wikipedia page, and over on the side, you can drop down menus, you can see clan branches, which would be actual parts of the clan that are split off. You'd see the septs of clans, so there's surnames that are associated with that clan. May not be related, might be, might not be, but they were definitely kindreds that would have lived under the power of the Clan Donald, and therefore owe them their allegiance. Maybe more, some of it's kin-based, some of it's more feudal. I think my point here is that we lose something in translation. And so, and I've gone back to the Facebook group, we get into really nitpicking this topic using English terms, which don't often connect very well. And so I just think it's kind of silly. Let me give you an example. Do clans exist outside the Highlands? You could go a lot of different directions with that. And officially, what's a clan? Well, if we translate it, first of all, like I said, the English language just doesn't have all the nuanced words that we can pull from Gaelic to describe a kin-based society. Like, we don't have something, we have third cousins and fourth cousins that describe my relationship to another person or a specific family, but not like the word Fina, and I can just say the word Derfina, and we know exactly how close we are to the common ancestor, this kin group versus that. It's just not as well developed. And so, but then we get in these arguments about what counts as a clan, what doesn't count as a clan. Is there clans in the Highlands or in the Lowlands, and what parts of the Lowlands, because that would matter. There's parts of the Lowlands that were Gaelic speaking up until like the 1600s in Galloway. There's other parts that were never Gaelic speaking but still developed a kin-based system. And to what degree did they look or not look like Highland clans? And we get into these things, but I'm just kind of pointing out the flaw in the whole conversation is that we're using a different language to talk about this, and there's problems there. And if you don't, and so it's not like you can't have the conversation, but you've got to account for some of that. You have to at least know that when an English speaker says the word clan, and a person, if we could transport somebody from 1400s Highland Scotland and right now and give them our language or perfectly take their language, and we can just perfectly communicate, but acknowledging that there's two different languages, holy cow. We might look like, when we learn what we would learn from that person, like we've been chasing our tail this whole time in this conversation. That's the impression that I get from this, is that we need to at least account for the fact that our English words don't nearly come close to pulling in all the nuances of this kin-based society from and I'm not going into Borders or Aberdeenshire or the Lothian or these other parts of Scotland. I'm specifically talking about, because we've been using Gaelic words, so like just going right into a Gaelic system, and we're describing what it looked like there, and then we're using these English words and talking to other English speakers. And so I just think that there's some flaws with that. Once again, I don't want to shut down the conversation. I just think it needs to be addressed. All right, so I mentioned some of the different back and forth that would be affected by this concept and the different words. So one thing I might throw out there, this is something I pulled off that Catherine Swift video. All this implies a common descent, which would have been more true for this whole concept of common descent, common ancestor. That would have been more true for the leading members of the members of the leading kindred of the clan than it would be for the rank and file. Okay, because it was really important to them who was eligible for succession. Right? Now, when we talk about these two different systems, the clan system and feudalism, which I would argue are not mutually exclusive. It's not clan system or feudalism. As I mentioned when I was talking about tanistry in a previous episode, these guys use whatever worked for them. Whatever would give them the advantage or the upper hand. If you got a guy over here you think this is the best guy to lead the clan, but he technically does not satisfy all the rules, they would make up his genealogy. So even amongst the leading members of the leading kindred of the clan, you can't just say it was rock solid, although it's much better documented than the rank and file. So anyway, that's just a little thought on that. And then as I wrap this up, this has implications for other conversations that I've seen a ton of on the Facebook group, which is we get into these conversations of where do we get the clan system? And people are saying, well, the Normans brought in feudalism and the clan system sprang out of that. Is that true? Because this conversation would have bearing on that conversation, I think. Or was it inherited from farther back than the Normans? And how did these two systems maybe interact with each other? I don't know. Let's talk about that next time. I think that's going to be my part 2. I told you at the beginning this is going to be part 2, so that's it. Join me next time for the conversation on that. If you want to reach out to me, the best way to do that is you can. I've got an email set up specifically for this. It's thescottishclans@gmail.com. Or you can do it from the Podbean platforms. Go on Podbean. You can comment. If you get into an episode and you look for this episode, which will probably be the first one you see on the main website at scottishclans.podbean.com, and you can listen to it and you can comment, and I can see that. You can go on Apple Podcasts, give me a review. One favor I'd ask of you, will you share this podcast, this episode specifically, or this podcast generally, with somebody you think could totally get into this? So, as we wrap this up, don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, whatever it is on the platform that you're listening to this on. Don't forget to do that. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts and you go over there and leave me a review, that'd be awesome. Also, it helps the broader community because, like I said earlier, we've already got some awesome people in this group, in this audience, in this conversation, and I'm looking forward to see who else is out there that could contribute to this or that would benefit by hearing this. And also, don't forget to go check out those sources that I mentioned. I spent a little time getting that up and going, so I'd be interested to hear what you think about that. Go on scottishclans.podbean.com, click on sources, and go check out my list that I've got on there. And until next time, Marsh and Lev and Drasta.